Hi, this is Mike Peterson from Challenge Island, Oakland County East, back with Steamtastic Friday. We're wrapping up our music series here for our STEAM lessons for this summer, and we've been talking about the science, technology, engineering, and art, but there's a lot of math that goes into music too, so I thought we'd give you just a quick intro to some of the things you can add up in music to kind of throw some math in there and get more familiar with how to play some stuff. So first, when we look at music, here's just an example of a pretty simple song. If you know music, this might look familiar. We'll check you at the end and see if you can figure out what song this is. But there's two things kind of going on here where some math comes in to help us out. So you can see it's kind of like its own language. So we've got all these notes here. Each of the notes tells us which note to play, like high notes or low notes, but also tells us how long to play each note. So that's where some of the math comes in. And so each one of those means different things. We'll show you more about that in a second. But then we also break it up so it's just not one big mess of notes that we've got to figure out. So we put these lines in between them to kind of keep it straight so it's a little easier to keep track where I am as I'm trying to play the song. So let's break that down into two pieces. So first, in terms of the notes themselves, each of the notes tells you by the shape of it how long it is. So when we play music, we think in terms of how many counts. So for example, if a note was 2 counts and I was counting like this, it would be like 1, 2, stop. Or if it was 3 counts long, it'd be like 1, 2, 3, stop. So that's the kind of how that works out when we draw them. So the biggest note is this one here. It's what we call a whole note. So if we got a bar of music, and there's usually when we do a bar of music, there's 4 counts inside there. So we would let that one take up the whole measure. So the whole bar are all four counts there. So that's why I've got the 4 there. And then down here, if you wondered, like if we want to rest, like put a space in there where there's nothing going on, then these are the symbols for those. But we'll spend more time on these up here. So this is a whole note. If we just want the note to fill up half of a bar or half of a measure, that would be a half note. So it's just like this one, but we put a little stem or a line on the top of it to show that we don't want it to be quite as long. And then you can see that we just start adding more stuff to them each time to make them faster and faster. So this is our half note. That would get 2 counts in a regular measure. If we fill in the hole for the half note, it becomes a quarter note. So it takes up a quarter of a measure. So if the measure is 4 counts long, it's kind of like 4 quarters in a dollar. So each of the quarters is one count. So that would be worth 1. Now, if we want to cut it down even shorter, then we've got to start adding more stuff to the quarter note. So here we have this little flag on, and that turns it from a quarter note into an eighth note. So it makes it half as fast or half as big again. So that one's only half a count. So it goes from 1 count down to half a count. And then we can keep doing that. We won't go too much further here, but you can have you can go from an eighth to a 16th to a 32nd. So you just keep multiplying by 2 or making them half as long. And then they just get bigger and bigger with all those flags on them. We'll kind of stay at this end for now since we're just getting started. All right, so that's how that works. And then the other piece of this is to figure out back to the bars is how do we know, okay, so we know how long the notes are, but how do we know how many to stick in between those bars so we don't get confused later when we try to play the song? So that's what we call a time signature. So it tells us how much time we're going to take up each time we play one of those bars. So for example, here, there's always 2 numbers to it. The first one tells us how many beats or like how many snaps are gonna go into each bar. So if we were making a set of music that had this one, we would put 3 bars. So like 3 quarter notes or a half note and a quarter note so that it adds up to 3 counts. On the bottom, that tells us, okay, well, what counts is taking up 1 count inside that bar. So when we do a 4, that's like remember like a quarter is 1/4. So the 4 tells us that a quarter note is going to count as 1 bar. So that was one of those notes that was filled in with a stem sticking out of the top of it. So we'll see more about that later. All right, so once we know how long each note is and how many we're allowed to put in each bar, then we can start writing some music, or we can kind of create little music quizzes for each other to see, okay, let's write some music and see if it actually works out or not. So let's try that together. So for example, here's some examples of ones that actually work. So these are all right. So for example, say we had a measure where a quarter note takes up 1 count, and we only want to put 2 counts in the bar. We could do something like this, where we just have 1 count, 2 counts. So that could work. Or if we had that 3/4, like we did on that slide a couple sheets back, we could put 3 counts in there. Or if there's 4 counts, we could put 4 counts in. Down here, we can get a little fancier. So instead of having that 4 on the bottom, say we wanted a half note to take up 1 count or an eighth note to take up 1 count, we can do that too. Just gets a little trickier than for what we actually put into each of those bars to make it all add up right for the math to work out. So let's go back to that quiz and let's see if we can figure out how this works here. So for example, let's say I showed you this bar and you had to figure out, okay, is that a real bar of music or not? Or is he just messing with me? So let's think it through. So this bottom 4 tells us that each quarter note counts as a count. And then this 4 up here tells us we're allowed to put 4 of those into each measure. So let's count them up here. So these were each 1. So there's 1 count, there's 2 counts. We said a half note is worth 2 of these. So we got 1 count, 2 count, and then 2 more here. So we got 2 and 2 makes 4. So this one works. So we're good on that one. All right, so if you got that right, good job. All right, let's check this one out. So here we've got 3, 4 over here. So again, a quarter note's going to count for 1 count. So we're the same thing there. But this time we're only allowed to put 3 counts in each of the measures. Let's add it up and see if it works this time. So remember from last time, this one counts as 2. So we got 1, 2 there. Then we've got those eighth notes. Those were each half a count. So we got 2, we got 2 and a half, we got 3. Oh, we're starting to run out of room here. And then we got 1 more. So we're up to 3, then we added 4. Ugh, I got too many measures or too many counts in here. So this one doesn't work. So we'd have to rewrite our music and do it a little bit different for this one to come out, right? Let's try 1 more. All right, this one's a little trickier. So here we've got 6 and 8. So the 8 on the bottom this time means that an eighth note, that was the one that's filled in with a little flag on the top. So each one of those counts, that counts as 1 count. And we're allowed to put 6 of those in each measure, or something that adds up to that. So if we look at this one, let's count. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 eighth notes there. So that's cool. All right, so that measure worked out. Let's check this one over here. So remember, a quarter note counts for 2 compared to the eighth note. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this one works out too. So if you got any music around the house, or if you want to just try making up your own, try writing that out and kind of try quizzing somebody else. Check mom or dad on this. So go ahead, you put a couple numbers over here, write some notes out, then do the math, see if it adds up or not. All right, so let's go back to where we started. So now that we've talked about how each of these is a different length, and we talked about how to group them together so it makes sense, now we can be a little smarter about figuring out, okay, what's going on this sheet of music here? How do we play this out? So I'm going to try playing this. So you can see I've got a couple of fast notes, some slow notes, an even longer note there. So let me play this now, and we'll see what happens. See if you recognize this. So we're going to start with those eighth notes. So just listen, we'll see what we get here. All right, so that might sound familiar. That's also known as Happy Birthday. That song's been around a really long time. So if you ever wanted to learn to play that, that would be the music notes. That's how we'd write that out so we could share that song with each other. All right, so I hope that really quick intro into music and the math behind it helped you. Feel free to give that a try. Next time you get a chance to see some music, see if you can work it out and then give it a try. Try playing some music. All right, with that, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.